I think the two biggest questions we all have about LSU this year is, number one, is the offensive line going to be better? 5 new starters, tons of experience, tons of talent, tons of depth. They just haven't played together. That's one. 2, how much better will the defense be? As a matter of fact, Brian Kelly on Monday was asked point blank, 17, how much better this defense will be this year.
I just think there's a lot of confidence back there. How do you measure confidence? It's just the way they handle themselves, the way they play. They believe in themselves. There's a trust factor that they're going to go make a play. Confidence comes from playing the game, right? A lot of those guys that are back there now have played a lot of football. They're experienced players. And when you bring that experience forward, things like confidence come out, high competitive drive. Look, we got to put it all together. That's why there's great anticipation going into Saturday. But I think I have a trained eye as to what I'm looking at. And what I see more than anything else is a group that's very confident.
You added AJ Haulcy, who's played in 36 games. You've added Tamarcus Cooley, who was a starter last year at NC State. You've added Mansoor Delane, who's a 2-year starter at Virginia Tech. It's the thing we keep going through with this defense is you've got a lot of guys that are new, but you've got a ton of experience. It's as Dabo was talking, meeting with reporters and talking about the similarities with LSU and Clemson, which are true. Veteran quarterbacks, high-powered offenses, tons of talent on the defensive side. The difference between the two is how they've gone about doing it. Clemson returns 16 starters, the most returning production in the country. LSU has tons of production. It's just guys that produced at other places. Patrick Payton, Jack Pyburn, Mansoor Delane, AJ Haulcy, Tamarcus Cooley, all over the field. And that's just on the defensive side of the ball. So, I will say that, when Kelly was talking about the defensive backs, and in particular it's safety with Haulcy and Cooley, and they've gotten a lot of the conversation, and rightfully so. Because anybody with 2 eyes and a pulse that watched the defense a year ago recognized how poor the safety play was. And it's not to call out any college athlete or to make light of anyone or to scapegoat anyone. It's just to say you were very bad at that position, whatever metric you want to look at. If it's the yardstick that you gave up, if it's the Pro Football Focus grades, if it's the fact that you had guys that were starting last year that have both one transferred to another. Sage Ryan's now at Ole Miss. Jordan Gilbert's now kind of running 3rd team safety and 2nd at star behind Perkins. That's the fact that circumstantial, the fact that you went and signed 2 safeties in the portal is an illustration of how much of a need there was. And this was the point where Brian Kelly was asked about, AJ Haulcy and Tamarcus Cooley and Mansoor Delane, these veteran defensive backs, and how you can tell and notice their maturity, their comfort, their confidence. This is a soundbite that a lot of us have kind of laughed at a bit because Brian Kelly makes reference to he says you put a sword in the sheath. You start with the seatbelt celebration. You see a lot of defensive backs do when there's an incomplete. They'll get up and they'll do the thing across their body. That's like putting a seatbelt on, like you got them locked down. That's what that signifies. He said you put a sword. I don't think they're putting a sword. I think it's a seatbelt is the celebration. But that's what he's referencing when he says this.
They have practiced. They have competed in the manner that we thought that they would. They attack every practice. They're our hardest workers. That, in my experience, has proven to be the differentiator between those guys that haven't played a lot of football and have. They show it in practice, too. They play with a swagger. They make plays in practice, and they're not doing the sword thing and, all that stuff. They're like, next play. And to me, those little nuances show I'm confident. It's kind of like the old adage, you hear it all the time. You get in the end zone, give the ball to the official that you expect to be there again. And so I see a lot of that on the field.
He would go on at the end of that soundbite, and he says, I'm not trying to be the old guy. I want him to have fun. But there is something to be said there. When you make a play and you're just on to the next, it's not get up and celebrate. And some of that is just maturity and having been there. So that's what he was talking about. And listen, there's a degree of comfort and confidence there. AJ Haulcy, as a freshman at New Mexico, was playing a game in Baton Rouge against Tiger Stadium, making tackles on Jaden Daniels the year Jaden Daniels won the Heisman. You know what I mean? Like, there's some of that. Or forgive me, that was 2022. There's Jaden's first year in Baton Rouge when New Mexico played in Baton Rouge. Tamarcus Cooley last year was playing Clemson at Clemson. Mansoor Delane was playing last year against Clemson when he was at Virginia Tech. There is a comfort and familiarity with all of these guys who have played a lot, even your own guys. Ashton Stamps is now a 3-year contributor starter at LSU. Your depth at safety. A guy like Deshaun Spears, who's a 5-star, who went through the fire last year as a freshman. And Javen Toviano, who's really a very talented, physically gifted player who's growing up, came from one of those football factory type schools in Texas that's growing up into it as well. And now they're not called on to be impact starters for you, but to provide depth in a rotation for you. That's the biggest thing, experience and depth. It's just got these guys playing together for the first time. It's a similar question to the offensive line. It's my singular hesitation with this team, not long-term, because I think once we talk about getting into October, November, December, they're going to be awesome. My only question is August the 30th, when they play for the first time ever together, and it's on the road against a great opponent, how quickly can they assimilate against a team that's played a ton of football together? That's my one big question for this team. We're going to start getting answers really quickly, but Brian Kelly's been around a long time and says they knew what they were looking for in these transfers. They got plenty of them. And it's guys that seem to have worked together pretty quickly. When I ask staff members candidly off the record about this, they all kind of say independent of each other the same thing. Like, the leadership, the mentality on this team is outstanding. The best players are the hardest workers. There's great player leadership. The guys like each other. Now, a great question is, what happens when you face adversity? What happens when you lose for the first time? Because they're going to lose. What happens when you lose for the first time? What happens when you give up the big touchdown? How quickly do you respond? Those are the types of things we all find out when they tee it up, kick it off, start playing. They'll start to do that on Saturday. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.